Scripts for agents. So we're going to talk about today is the exact scripts that we use when we call agents to get information about a property that's listed. Our job when we talk to an agent is to gather as much information as possible, and we just want to find out anything that might help us make a better decision. The more information that we have when making a decision on a property or creating a strategy, the better off we are. So one of the first things we do when we find a property that makes sense, like the one when we did our filter, we found one that was listed for 99,000. We looked at it and we assumed that we might be around $85,000 based on a quick assessment. What we would do from there is we would create a ballpark. We use this ballpark so that we can start a conversation with the agent. And the ballpark for that house, if we're thinking 85, might be 80 to 90,000. Just keeping it pretty vague. Just keep in mind that that search that we did was a very vague search. It's not going to be exact. It's not the perfect search. So obviously we might have to go back and do due diligence. So we wouldn't want to call and say, hey, would you take 85 for the property? It's very certain. It's very, it locks us into a price. And we don't know that we can pay 85. We also might get there and find out we can pay 90. Maybe it's only 40 or 50K and work instead of 60. We don't really know any of these things until we go out. But what we have to do so we don't go see every property is we have to create a ballpark. And really what we're gauging when we call and ask this question, would you consider this offer? We're really gauging to see if there's any motivation or if there's any ability to work with the property, any information we can get that makes us either not excited to go see the property or excited to see the property. Like, hey, bring us an offer a little lower. We're really ready to go forward. If I hear something like that, I'm definitely going to dig a little deeper and go out. So the first thing that we say when we call an agent is, hey, we start our script as this, and then we keep it really simple. I don't believe in word for word scripts, but you can follow this word for word. But really the key to every script is that we create guidelines for it. I love to just generate a handful of questions that I asked, and then you can fill in the blanks when you transition from one question to the other. But the questions create a really good foundation for you. So if you get, you don't know what to say or where to go from here, you always have a question you can lean on. So I always start the conversation very short and sweet. And I started with like, hey John, is 123 Main Street still available? And the reason I started off so just to the point is that agents are really busy. And Delante, one of the people that works with me, he was calling agents and I overheard him and I realized he sounded a little bit like a telemarketer. He was like, hey, is this Mr. Smith? Hi, Mr. Smith. I'm calling about 123 Main Street and I wanted to see if you had a minute to talk about it. And it was so much that they were already like, oh, well, I'm really busy. Can I call you back later? He was getting that a lot. And what we assessed is that, first of all, he was taking too long to get to the point. Second of all, he was kind of changing the way that he naturally sounds. He's very, a very laid back, cool guy. And he kind of sounded like his voice went up and he sounded a little bit like a telemarketer. So what we want to do is make our phone calls to the agent sound as casual as possible. We want them to really replicate how a friend would talk to a friend. So if the conversation is something like, hey John, is 123 Main Street still available? I mean, it sounds like someone from the office is calling, a friend's calling and asking that question. And it's a very to the point question. So John now is not going to feel like, oh God, this person's calling me and asking me a million questions. He's like, it's a simple yes or no. And what we're doing is getting that person engaged. And let's just pretend John's the agent. We'll go with that for a bit. So if we get him engaged and we get him to answer one simple question, then we can go from there. So the first question is 123 Main Street still available? And then we want to hit him with a ballpark. So if he says, yeah, it's still available, then I would say something along the lines, oh, that's great to hear. Let me ask you a question. We're taking a quick look at the property. We'd probably be coming in somewhere in a ballpark of like 80 to 90,000. Is there any room with the seller's asking price, or would you think that would be a waste of time to put an offer in like that? And what we're doing is, would that be a waste of time to put an offer in like that? A lot of times agents surprisingly will tell you that, yes, it would be a waste of time. We just listed for 99. They'll tell you, but you'd be surprised. Quite often we'll hear things like, well, I listed it for 99, but I told the seller they need to sell it for 80 and that they should expect probably to get a lower offer than 100. That would be really great for us to hear because that would really indicate that if we were to bring an 85K offer, that it would make a lot of sense and that this agent, for first of all, would be behind our offer and be pushing it to their seller, versus like anything. So if we don't have the agent behind us, then if the agent's saying, no, I wouldn't take that, I can get you more, well, likely our offer won't get accepted. And maybe it isn't the best time to put that offer in. So we always start off with a ballpark and if we hear what we quite often hear is that, well, we just put it on for 99. We think we're priced really well. We're going to get like many offers on this. And then how I would end it from there is if they're just like, no, I think you'd be wasting your time at 85. I don't think they're going to, take an offer like that. Then you just like, hey, you mind if I follow up with you in a few weeks if it hasn't sold? And if they're like, oh, sure, follow up, then we give it a few weeks and then we follow up. We put it on our spreadsheet because we're pretty close, and we follow up from there. Ultimately, though, you do that if you feel like there's just nothing happening. They're just really stuck on the price. But you could also say, is there any room on the price? Obviously they might say, well, yeah, they might accept like 90. They might accept 95. Right? If we can get some movement, then this might be worth our time to go out and see. But the key for us is, as we're talking to these agents, we want to get as much information as possible, anything they're willing to share. We want to start off, though, with a very low investment, like, is the property still available? Yes or no? The next piece is, if they were to say something along the lines of like, yes, this property is still available, and yes, we would consider a lower offer because we were kind of expecting we would get one, then I would first of all, I would say, hey, well, listen, I'm going to go see the property today and get you a solid offer. Let me ask you, if I can get you a solid offer for 85 today, would you be willing to present that for me, like ASAP? And if they're like, yes, then fine. When I say, are you willing to present that for me? They don't really know that I mean, will you represent me, or will you actually put my offer in for me? So this is the next piece. So if they come out, then what we would do from there is go see the property. If we liked everything we've seen, we'd actually put a hard price on it, like go out, really do, a nice estimate on it and get all that. We should be able to do that. When you follow the stuff I'll be teaching, you'll be able to do that in, say, a half hour, and you really be able to comp it, run through the numbers. I'm going to teach you how to do all that in this course. The key to it, though, is when you can come up with that strong number of like, okay, it's 82.5, then what we do from there is like, hey, John, we called earlier with the ballpark. I went out and I seen it's like 82.5 is going to be my offer. Do you think that would be worth your time putting that in? And see, we're using this language, your time. Would you present that for me? Now, what we're doing is we're starting to create NLP, and we're starting to create a message to them that we'd like them to put the offer in for us. Now, if they don't just say, hey, would you like to put the offer in for me? Or they don't say, hey, do you have an agent? Then I'm going to ask them to do it for me. Likely, if you send these hints, they might say, do you have an agent? Then I'm going to say, no, I actually don't have an agent. And, I'm an investor and I don't need anyone to represent me. So would you be okay putting an offer in for me? And they say yes, then great, have them do it. If they don't follow my hint and I have to ask them, I would ask them, hey, would you help me? Would you do me a favor? Is usually how I start this off. And they always respond with, well, it depends on what it is. I'm not going to lend you $1 million or, help you move your furniture or anything. But I probably could do you a favor. It's simple. So I want to take this approach of like, would you do me a favor? Would you be willing to put the offer in for me? I don't need to be represented. So the key to this script is I don't need to be represented. Because one of the big concerns that agents have is that if they're putting an offer in for you, is that they're technically representing you and they're also representing their other client, and they feel like that could be a conflict of interest. As investors, we really don't need to be represented. We don't need an agent to protect us. We just want them to put the offer in for us. The reason that it's really important that we get them to put the offer in for us, or someone they know or like, is because they will give us small amounts of information. Sometimes they'll just tell us everything we need to know, like here's exactly where you need to be, what you need to do, and that's fantastic when that happens. But at a bare minimum, they'll at least hint to us and point us in the right direction. Now, this might seem like a small edge, but it's really the secret to how you win deals these days. If you don't have a competitive edge over other people, there's really no logical reason that you should be winning these deals. But I can tell you, by me getting agents to put offers in or getting someone they know and like to put an offer in, then I've many times been told, privately, hey, you need to raise your offer $2,000 so you don't lose it. And you know how awesome it is to not lose a $30,000 profit over $2,000? like just because I didn't know and I didn't have that information. Yeah, so that's really important. So we want to get away from, you getting your agent to put your offers in. It's what I did for years, and it did work back when the market was pretty depressed, but now that the market's gotten really good, this is one of the updates, one of the changes, right? We don't think that like there has to be changes, but there is. House flipping 2.0 is really important, that you have to change the way you used to do things. Many people, you'll hear them complain about the MLS. It usually stems from the fact that they're still doing things the old way and they haven't evolved at all. So part of how we've evolved, and we went from not doing that many deals on the MLS to really crushing it in a market that everyone else is saying is not working, is we started to evolve. The first thing we realized is that if we can get the agent or someone the agent knows or like, we can then create an emotional connection. So this agent now has at least a minuscule, I mean, it might just be minimum, but they have a minimum like emotional connection to whether we win or lose. Now, if you're just a stranger and you have your random agent put in an offer for you, they just don't care if you win or you lose. Unless your agent knows a lot of people, then maybe you get a little advantage. But if your agent's like your aunt, your cousin, some person you met at a RIA, and they know 4 agents, then that's not really going to do you any favors. They're going to look at your contract. It's going to look like everyone else's contract. So it's pretty important that we are able to convince them or someone they know or like. So the way my script goes is if they're like, hey, I don't feel comfortable putting an offer in, John responds like, I can't put an offer. That's a conflict of interest. Just have your agent put it in. I would respond, well, John, I don't have an agent. I'm an investor, and I don't need representation, as I said. But with that being said, do you have like an assistant that could put it in for me, or someone that you know and like? And if they're like, oh, well, not really, we'll say, John, the reason I'm pressing this issue, this is what I would say next, is the reason I'm pressing this issue is that it's been my experience that when I have random agents put in offers, that they don't tend to do things the way you'd like to have it done. And the last thing I'd like to see is for us to put an offer in and not get accepted because it's written incorrectly or it's just not presented properly. Do you know anyone that you know and trust that could really do a good job of just writing the offer correctly? Because that's all I really need. I don't need anyone to tell me the comps or what the values are. I don't need any of that. I really just need someone to do the paperwork. And I really want to make sure it's someone that you know and trust that you like that could do the paperwork correctly so we have a smooth transaction. And then I always end it with, wouldn't that be great if we could do that? This is called a tie down from NLP. Wouldn't that be great? Well, people tend to be like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Because I hate when paperwork's done wrong. I hate when offers are, all bumpy and I got to do all the work. So at that point, then I asked them again, is there anyone, an assistant, someone in your office that you've met that you like? Someone you had lunch with last month. Like even if it's someone they just had lunch with and know and like, it creates the fact that they know that they were willing to recommend that person. They've already tied themselves to that person. They've already emotionally connected themselves to that person, which means you're more likely to get some inside information. Again, inside information, even the smallest amounts, is really powerful. So we want to make sure that we can get agents to write offers for us or someone that they know and like. So when you think you're going to get your agent to do this, it's actually a major mistake. I can tell you that in the 17 deals we got last year, only one of those deals was written by our agent. The other 16, we convinced other people to write for us that the agent knew or liked, and it was a big deal because every time that we would get really close in a tight negotiation, we were able to gather that information of, hey, you got to do this different, that different. You have 30 days on there. They're really looking for 14 days. And it was these small things that caused us to get a lot of those deals. We pretty much can tell you story after story after story of why we got deals and how they get done because of that. And we've also seen on the big end of it, right? We've seen on the small end, it's usually over 1,000 or 2, but I've seen on the big end where we've literally gotten an agent to write us an offer and they literally took the property off the market, just assuming that the seller would say yes and didn't allow anyone else to compete against us because they really wanted to get both sides of the commission. I've seen it as great as that, but don't expect that every time. But I've seen people do that. So maybe 1 out of 7 or 8 times, someone will just literally throw other offers in the trash or do so many crazy things that are really in your benefit. So just keep in mind, if you're worried about making that commission, you're worried about your agent making that commission, you're really stepping over dollars to get the pennies. The big money's made when you renovate the property. The big commission for your agent is made on the back end when they're able to sell it for you at a higher price.